It's the Mike Missanelli Show. It's 97.5, The Fanatic. It is really interesting, the phenomenon of Jalen Hurts and how many people criticize him and how many people stick up for him. It seems to be one or the other. Like, there's always a battle on people who, he can't do this, he can't do that. And then the other side is that I can't believe that you don't get. I mean, you every little thing this guy does, you criticize. When you don't look at all the other quarterbacks, you don't criticize the other quarterbacks. And my answer to that is that Philadelphia is Philadelphia. Like, we deal with our own laundry, so we're not going to sit here and say, well, Jalen Hurts doesn't do this, but the other guys around the NFL don't do that either. You know, we are centered on the quarterback position in this town and what he does or doesn't do. And a lot here's where it comes. I'm going to be honest. Where it comes into play is the black quarterback thing that people think that we're picking on him because he's a black quarterback, which I always blanch at. And I go, the quarterback here has always been criticized. Like, you can't get away from the quarterback being criticized, whether he is white or black. But there have been white quarterbacks that we didn't give any solace to at all. I mean, the last one being Carson Wentz, right? We destroyed that guy. The quarterback position, by its nature, is a position, since it's the most important in sports, we criticize it. The team's success primarily is based on how the quarterback performs. And you can look at that guy last night. I mean, the Ravens were getting chopped apart, right, early on in that game. And Lamar Jackson just took the game into his own hands and just, went crazy.
He's unbelievable,
right? And so the quarterback has the control most of the time of the situation. So I think it's very fair. If you're going to take that position, you're going to take the money of that position, you're going to take it under the proviso, it's the most important position in sports, then there's going to be a spotlight on you all the time.
And there should be. And there absolutely should be. You're right. It's the most important position in sports. And I've said this a lot. Quarterbacks can survive bad coaching. Bad quarterback play, the coach will never survive. The head coaches lose their jobs all the time when you get bad quarterback play. I mean, that's how important they are. Even guys like Bill Belichick couldn't survive the Mac Jones of the world. Andy Reid, the reason he didn't survive here was because after McNabb, they didn't have anybody else. Vic had one good season, but then they couldn't replace the franchise quarterback. When that happens, even Sean Payton, after Drew Brees left New Orleans, they couldn't replace the starting quarterback. People lose jobs when the starting quarterback doesn't play well because it is the most important. But I think it's fair to question Jalen Hurts at this point. I was always a big fan of Jalen, always, and I actually liked the draft pick. Was surprised by it at the time, but I liked it. And then in 2022, I thought, okay, look, I was proven correct. Last season, I didn't think it was as bad as some thought. I really didn't think Jalen played that poorly last year. But this season, the turnover issues, the problems to start the year, I'm starting to think, all right, well, maybe there is something going on with this guy. And that's why we threw the question out to start the show. Does it make sense to not put it all on his shoulders? It's, the term game manager you could use, but does it make sense now to rely on your offensive line and your running game and Jalen's legs as opposed to putting it all on his arm?
That's interesting that you said that you thought it was a great selection. Why? Well, at the time, like, there couldn't have been a worse selection. The Eagles got just flat out lucky with that.
Here's why I liked it, all right? We had just learned how important the backup quarterback position was. Carson Wentz goes down, Nick Foles steps in, and somehow goes on that magical run. So what I thought was, wow, Howie Roseman really forward-thinking here. Instead of overpaying for a backup quarterback, you drafted one that you can now have on a rookie contract for 4 seasons that had the ability to step in and win a football game if Wentz got hurt.
How? How did he have the ability to step in and win a football game? He got picked in the second round because people didn't think he was that good as a quarterback. How could you have selected him and say he could be a good backup? How? Where does that come from? Where does that come from? He was picked in the second round. How could you think that he would have been a good backup quarterback right away in the NFL?
Because look around the NFL right now. Who are good backup quarterbacks?
Look at the time.
Look at the time.
At the time, how could you think that guy could step into a game as a backup quarterback when nobody thought he could even play in this league?
Well, people thought he could play. There's a reason.
He was picked in the second round.
Yeah, it's a high draft pick.
That's not a high draft pick for a quarterback.
It's not one of the top draft picks for a quarterback.
They picked him because they thought in a couple years they could move him for an asset. They weren't picking him to think that he was going to be the backup.
You can't. If they thought that they could draft him and move him for an asset, then that also means that they thought he could step in and win a game or two if your starter quarterback
in his
gets hurt.
first year, or second year in the league, you thought he would be able to step in?
And he did. Oh. He came in, what was it, against New Orleans that year? And won the game.
They got lucky with that. They didn't think that. Come on.
When they drafted him, my exact thoughts were, great move in getting a backup quarterback that you don't have to overpay.
Oh, my God.
Mike, look around the NFL. There's a lack of quarterbacks.
I couldn't have been any more further from where you were with that pick. I didn't think it made any sense at all. In the first pick in the second round, when you could have got a guy that could actually help you play at another position, or you could have traded that pick to get CeeDee Lamb, you thought that was a good pick?
Yes, because of the importance of the backup quarterback, especially when you knew Carson Wentz was injury prone.
That was the propaganda that they spewed. That was the justification that they spewed.
Then why else do it? If you're saying they thought they could flip him for an asset.
They were a quarterback factory, and that they were going to develop a guy and maybe use him as an asset down the road to trade. That's why they selected him.
For them to use him as an asset.
They just signed Carson Wentz to a big deal.
Yes, but for them to use him as an asset would have meant that he had to have gotten some playing time, right?
No, not necessarily. They could have kept him as a backup without even him having a snap, and some quarterback desperate team would have reached out for him.
Carson Wentz had proven at that point that you couldn't trust him to play 16 games.
I get it, but you couldn't trust Jalen Hurts to come into the NFL in his first year to be a backup quarterback. You didn't even know what he was.
So I disagree.
Oh, man.
I disagree.
All right, let's get an arbitrator in here. Ray? I don't know. You could be on his side or my side. It doesn't really matter. What was your spin when they drafted Jalen Hurts?
When they drafted Jalen Hurts, I was like, with all the holes on this team, you're going to go do that? I understood the idea they were going for the backup quarterback thing, and I think
backup quarterback in the third, fourth round, maybe. Then if that was.
You just said you can't rely on a second-round pick to be a backup quarterback, and now you want him to find him in the fourth?
You're going to develop a guy. What I'm saying is you waste that second-round pick. You could have done the same development program as somebody else, if that's what your key was. He wasn't ready to be a backup quarterback in this league right away.
It wasn't. You're drafting him for the next 4, Mike. You got him on a 4-year rookie deal. So instead of having to go out and overpay a guy like a Joe Flacco or some of these other backup quarterbacks that they've had over the years, Chase Daniel.
Oh, man, I can't disagree with you more when it comes to that whole premise. But we're kind of off the premise because it worked out, I guess. So has it worked out now? Tell me whether it's worked out now. What is he right now for you as the quarterback of this team?
He's a guy that can win a lot of football games. Whether he does it with his arm or his legs, he can win games.
610-632-0975. On the other side, an emailer takes Bill apart, and I want to give Bill a chance to defend himself. The Mike Missanelli Show is on 97.5 The Fanatic.